Hi everyone, Armoured Pants here, and I have another video for you in the Russian line. It's the Tier 9 K-91 premium tank, which is on sale at the moment in the stores. Now, we're going to have a look at the price first, and we're going to have a look at the tech spec, and we're going to do some gameplay, all the usual stuff. The price at €16.99 in the EU store, which is not bad at all when you consider that Wargaming was charging 50, 60, 70 euros for some Tier 9s when they came out, or putting them in crates, and you could pay crazy money to get one. So it's not bad value at all, right? So that's good. We're going to have a look at the tech spec. We're going to use blitzhanger.com for that in a second. But before that, I want to take a time out. I want to have a look at some game philosophy. And why do I want to do that? Well, it's because this is a Tier 9 tank. And I know that I have a mix of subscribers on the channel. Some of you very experienced players, some of you good players, some of you not so good, some of you new players who are new to the game. And this is kind of aimed a bit at you newer players, right? So I want to have a look at this graph here, right? And basically this is a graph depicting approximately where you should play. And it's based on the number of games played on the bottom axis, and the horizontal axis, and the vertical axis is the tiers. So more games you play, the easier it is for you to go up and play in higher tiers, right? And the red graph represents kind of your experience or where you should be playing. So when you start off, you should be playing in lower tiers. As you get more experience, you move up, right? Pretty simple graph. Don't worry whether the line reflects your gameplay or not. It's just illustrative. Let's take, for example, let's say this is tier 5, right? So you've played at this point several thousand games, and you should be then playing around tier 5, tier 6, right? So you do an intersection of your games played, and it should approximately tell you what tier you should be playing at, where you are comfortable, where it makes sense for you to play. Let's say if the previous example was tier 5 or tier 6, this is tier 9, right? Look at the difference, right? You have to play a substantial amount, a larger amount of games. You have to be more experienced to play comfortably at tier 9. You're up against the best players in the game, right? If you go there too quickly, you create this gap illustrated here by this red circle. This gap is a danger zone for you. This gap is a difference between your skill level, your experience, and where you should be playing. Remember, up at tier 9, tier 10, you're playing the best players in the game, but also the best tanks in the game are there. So therefore, this gap represents a danger zone for you. So therefore, I would advise you, please really consider about getting this tank and playing up there if you don't have a substantial number of games under your belt, if you haven't played a lot of Blitz and become an experienced player. I'm not talking about, being good or bad. Everybody has good and bad games. Everybody can play well or not. But there's a certain level of experience that you need. If not, you enter this area of potential failure. And you don't want to do that, because you're not going to enjoy it. You're going to lose more games. Your teammates are not going to enjoy it. They're going to start giving you also a lot of toxic abuse, because unfortunately that's a feature of Blitz. They're going to be telling you to go back to lower tiers, etc. You're just not going to enjoy it. And effectively, there's no pay to win in this game, despite what some people say. But there is pay to lose. And in this instance, you can pay your €17, go up to a level beyond which your competence allows you to play it, and you're going to lose. And it's no fun. You won't enjoy it. Your stats will suffer. You lose self-confidence, etc. So I would strongly advise you not to do that. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't get the tank. You can get the tank, put it in the garage, because it's a good price now. But I'd strongly advise you not to go and play if you don't have that level of experience. Now, let's have a look at the tech spec. So this is a good tank, right? It is a good premium tank. You get 135% credit coefficient, which is number 3 in its tier. There are, of course, much better credit makers like the Luva, etc. But in its tier, it's number 3. In terms of provisions, I would run condensed milk, improved fuel, and extra combat rations. I would run calibrated shells, supercharged refined gun, max out the gun handling and pen. You can reuse calibrated shells here because it is a magazine loaded gun and gun system, so therefore using gun rammer makes little or no difference to your actual ability to fire shells. There's 3 shells in the magazines. There's a 100mm caliber gun, so it's a decent gun. You get 260mm of pen with AP, 341mm with heat, which is our Pramo, and HE gives you 55mm of pen, and all that is running calibrated shells, of course, which I definitely recommend you run in this tank. Now, there are 3-second reload between each shell, and the magazine takes 17 seconds to reload. That means in 29 seconds you can unload 2 full magazines. That means that's going to give you between 2,100 and 2,400 damage just firing AP rounds, which is a lot of damage. Just think that will clear off most tier 8, most tier 9 heavy tanks, and even some tier 10 heavy tanks. Now, in terms of muzzle velocity, the AP rounds, it's really high, right? It's 1996 meters per second. But there's a huge decrease when you rotate into heat or HE. It's only 1170 meters per second. That's a 41% decrease. So be aware of that. Gun handling is very different with those different shell types. You get 7 degrees of gun depression, 10 degrees of elevation, which is decent gun alignment for a Russian tank, especially. 40 kilometers per hour in going forward, 15 reverse, so it's decent top speed for a heavy tank, but it also has very decent power to weight ratio, and it has decent traverse too. So this tank is a good brawler. It's fairly maneuverable and fairly agile for a heavy tank, and therefore that gives you a lot more options in your gameplay, and we'll discuss that when we look at it in a second. Now, in terms of the armor profile in this tank, it's good. It's not going to let you down. First thing you'll notice is that this turret is really strong. I mean really strong. It's going to bounce shots all day long. It also has these really weird and acute angles and obtuse angles all over it, so you're going to get weird bounces off it too. It's difficult to pen. It's a tough customer. If you look at the relative armor numbers along the side of the tank here, you can see them in the top left hand corner. You can see that it will side scrape, it will get bounces. So if you know how to side scrape, you will be able to do so in this tank, and we'll actually have a look at that in action in the gameplay we're going to look at in a second. It has less armor on the lower plate and on the turret, and of course in the back, but really it overall has decent armor all around, and you'll get bounces in this tank even when you don't play for them. It's a tough competitor, it's a tough cookie. If you're top tier, you can be a bully in this tank. Even if you're up tiered, it can hold its own. So overall, tough competitor, and it's very, very good at playing the heavy tank role. If you don't know what a heavy tank role is, please watch the heavy tank guide that we have on channel, and I'm going to put a link in the description for you, because playing heavy tanks, you have a specific role that you need to play in the game. You need to understand that role to be an effective heavy tank player, so please have a look at that. Now, we see here when you're up against tier 8, if you're top tier, you are a top tier bully. Against tier 9s, you're also going to do well, but even against tier 10s, we're looking here, you're still going to get some bounces, especially if you can protect that vulnerable lower plate, which you see here, the green rectangle at the bottom. In terms of tactics, if you're top tier, plays this, you can play this as a frontline heavy tank. Go and seize the strategic positions of importance on the map. You can do that. The gun system in this tank allows you to put in a lot of damage. Other tanks are going to be afraid of you. If you are bottom tier, if you get up tiered, then you can go and support your heavy tanks. Particularly if your heavy tanks are big and heavily armored, you can just pop out from behind them, and in 6 seconds you can unload your total magazine, doing anything from 1,000 to 1,500 damage. Really impressive. Okay, now I want to take a time out here, because this is a magazine loaded gun system. You may not have played one before, so we're going to have a mini tutorial on playing magazine loaded gun systems, which I hope you will find useful. So they call them autoloaders sometimes, or magazine loaded systems, and they're very different in terms of how you play and engage in the game. So we're going to give you a small mini tutorial here, and hopefully that will tell you all you need to know and enable you to maximize your gameplay in this very effective heavy tank. Now, playing autoloaders or playing magazine loaded tanks is different. If you look at the straight line here, that represents how you engage with the enemy in a normal gun system. So basically you have a consistent ability to engage and to influence the game. It's flat. So basically, if you take a standard gun system, you've got like 7 or 8 seconds in between your reloads. So therefore, every 7 or 8 seconds, you can fire at the enemy if there's a target. So you've a consistent flat engagement pattern. When you play an autoloader, it's not like that. You have this curved engagement and ability to influence the game, where on the top you have areas of increased activity where you can engage the enemy more than you can with a standard gun system, represented here by the flat line. But then you also have these areas of decreased activity. When your magazine is reloading, it takes longer and you can't engage, you can't influence the game. So therefore you need to be aware of this cyclical nature of your ability to influence the game and your gameplay type, and adapt your play accordingly. And then we're going to have a few tips and hints that will enable you to play autoloaders or magazine loaded systems to better effect. But just being aware of this cyclical nature will enable you to be a better player with your autoloader or with your magazine loaded gun system. Because, you know, if you are not aware of this going into the game and you try to play as you normally play, engaging the enemy in a consistent linear pattern, you will fail because, you know, you won't be aware of what to do in your downtime. So playing autoloaders, just some tips. So always count your shells, always know how many shells you have left. Because that's very important. Stay safe when you reload, because you can't influence the game, so back out and go into cover when you're reloading. There's no point being out there being a target, there's nothing you can do. Use your inactive time when you're reloading to do other things, so for example base capture or moving to engage the enemy. Or if you have no targets and you've only one shell left in your magazine and you know you need to move to find targets, don't just roll out with one, use that time when you're moving to reload the whole magazine. Keep your shell icon open all the time. Why? Because you can double tap on the shell to reload. You don't need to fire off the last shell. You often see inexperienced players who, with this type of gun system, they've got one shell left in the magazine and they fire it off to get the reload. You don't have to do that. All you need to do is double tap on the open shell icon and it automatically reloads the entire magazine for you. So therefore you don't need to fire. That's an amateur mistake. You don't need to waste a round or credits, and you don't need to break your camo and give away your position. And reload as often as you can to get max burst damage. So what does that mean? Well, if you fired off even only one shell and you've got two in the magazine, but you know there's going to be no targets for the next 17 seconds because you're going to capture a base, or you've cleared off the enemy in that area and you have to move to engage, well, double tap the shell icon and reload, so that when you engage them you don't have two shells in the magazine, you've got three, right? So just be aware of that. Be aware of your shell cycling and you will be a much better player playing these autoloaders or playing magazine shell system. Now this is a standard magazine shell system. It's different to, let's say, what you get on the Euro line, where it automatically reloads when you fire a shell. Here you don't. You get your 3 and then you need to reload fully. Now gameplay, we're going to have a look at main runes. I think this is a good example of this tank in action. I'm lucky enough, I'm top tier here, so I'm going to do exactly what I said to you in terms of tactics. I'm going to go towards A and I'm going to seize this strategic corner at the top left hand side of this map. This corner here in A for heavy tank play and on this game is key. Seizing it and holding it for your team is key usually to winning this game, unless of course you've got a lot of lights and meds and everybody goes towards C. But if there's a lot of heavies on the team, you are going to engage around here. Getting there quickly and seizing that corner is vital, and that's what I do. I go up, and this is good heavy tank play. Now I'm going to stop it here because we see here the IS-3 is coming across. So what I'm going to do is I'm in a good position here for side scraping onto him. I'm going to track him and I'm going to do a tracking shot, smash him into the back of him. Now I see the other K-91 is coming. Now I'm in a difficult position. There are two angles of attack on me, and you can't angle your armor when there are two angles of attack. So you see I get penned on both sides. So I'm in a crossfire, right? But I don't panic. I decide, look, I'm going to get punishment, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to make them suffer too. So what I do is I put my rounds, and I put both of my rounds remaining in the magazine into the same position, the K-91. I track him, I blow his modules, I make him use his repair kits, and now I know he's down to no repair kits. I've taken some punishment, I've lost over half my hit points, but I've seized that position for my team, and now I readjust. Reset my angles. I'm in a side scraping angle now, a defensive position where I can hold this corner. Very difficult for them to pen me, and now we start to get to rewards. So there we go, put 2 nice rounds into him, leave the IS-3 as a one shot, try to get him the last one, fluff that shot. But not to worry, I'm in a good position here. I've made most of my rounds count so far. 5 of the 6 rounds I've fired have hit home and done a lot of damage. And now I have reloaded And because I'm aware of my enemy, I know that this K-91 is reloading. I have 17 seconds now to clear him off. And he knows it. Look, he knows. He puts his gun in the air. He knows he's dead. There's nothing he can do. That's heavy tank play 101. Perfect heavy tank play. Perfect heavy tank play when you're top tier. Taking the hits for your team, utilising your strengths, going and clearing off that corner, clearing off the enemy tanks and seizing that strategic position. And now Supremacy 101, because it's a Supremacy game, I cap. And you should always be conscious of that when you play Supremacy games. We've said that many times before on channel. Now we as the heavy tanks, we've done our job, right? We have cleared off and captured that corner. Our lights and mediums, I couldn't really see what was going on, so I don't know how they fared, but I know we were down a tank. Now we've evened that up. And you know, guys, one thing I'd say to you about me losing those hit points there, that's why you have a hit point pool. Blitz is not a game where you get shot once and you die. It's not a simple game like that. You're given a pool of hit points because they expect you to lose some, take some hits. Nothing wrong with taking hits if it's for the right reason, which was there. Now if you look here, this engagement here, just look, since the time I spot him to clearing him off, 7.4 seconds. That's it. And that is the beauty and strength of an autoloader, of a magazine gun. Put a round into him, big max alpha roll, track him as well, blow his modules, take his shot, bounce it off my armour, moving backwards, not giving an easy shot, bounce that big round from the T-34-3, and then we cleared him and he's gone. 7.4 seconds. Not many tanks can do that much damage that quickly. Now you see exactly what I mean in terms of me using my downtime to reload the magazine fully, not just rolling out with one, but I use the icon, tap on it, and I get a full reload. And you will see now why this is so important. Because after I cap, after I do my good job as playing Supremacy and make my second capture, now you will see, if I hadn't done that, if I don't know how to play an autoloader, if I'm not familiar with it, I would roll up here onto the standard B with only one round in the magazine. Instead I roll up with 3, and look at the difference that makes. Now instead of firing and I have 17 seconds to reload, I already have my next round loaded. So I've put 2 rounds into him, I take 1 round and I'm able to clear him off. And that is the difference of knowing how to play a magazine loaded gun and utilising the simple tips we've just discussed and not. It's a difference between clearing him off and not clearing him off. Maybe he even clears me off. So I think that's overall a good demonstration of the strengths of this tank, how to play this tank, but also how to play a heavy tank. And you know, I think this tank is very effective. I would recommend you to buy it if you are an experienced heavy tank player and have enough games under your belt. If you don't, then maybe buy it, keep it in your garage until you get a bit more experienced. I can't make you not play it, but I advise you against it, you know, because you won't enjoy it if you're an inexperienced player. By the way, there's nothing wrong with admitting this. There's no reason to think that I'm saying you're not a good player or anything like that. You know, that's not true. You will become a good player, you know, but at the moment you're inexperienced. Even if you take the great Michael Schumacher, maybe the greatest Formula 1 driver in the world, he started off racing karts and then he moved gradually up through the tiers until he went to the top tier, which is Formula 1, and he's maybe perhaps the greatest driver that's ever lived. That's arguable, of course, but he's definitely one of them, right? There's no shame in going up and earning your stripes, as we say, right? So I'm not saying that if you haven't played so many games you're not going to be a good player. Of course you can be a good player, the same as anybody else, but I'm just saying don't push it too far. Don't go from a go-kart to a Formula 1 car, end up crashing and killing yourself. So let's have a quick recap of everything that we've discussed so far and have a look at this very good heavy tank and this very good premium tank with its 135% preg coefficient, as I said, third best in tier 9. It has a 100mm gun, has the autoloader or magazine system, so please take note of the tips and hints that we gave in the tutorial, because as we said before, you can train hard and then fight easy, or you can ignore everything that we said here and train easy but fight hard. Play to the autoloader, play to the magazine, manage your shell cycles, be aware of the shells that you have in and reload as often as possible. 17-second reload for the magazine using calibrated shells, 3-second per shell. Decent power to weight ratio, good for a heavy tank, has to be said, good for a Russian tank as well. Also the gun alignment is good for a Russian tank. Traverse is good as well, which makes it a good brawler. But remember, our lesson from the standard B, count your shells and make sure you have a full magazine loaded if you can. As we said, the gun alignment is good, it's easy to get on target, and this is especially good for a Russian tank. And has very decent armour, even if up tiered, so angle up. You saw me side scraping there, make it difficult for the enemy, and shell management is key. Keep your shell selector open, cycle through your shells based on the target, and make sure that you have full magazine loaded as often as possible in the game. Managing your shell cycles to get max burst damage gives you a max burst damage multiplier when you play a magazine loaded gun system, and you will, as you saw when I came up against the standard B there, it's very effective and makes you have a better game. Cheers Mush, thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed it, I hope you found it useful. I guess all that remains for me now to say is pants off.